The bridge of the Orion crackled with barely contained despair. Earth, a shimmering blue marble nestled against the vast emptiness of space, burned brightly on the holoscreen. Xandari battleships swarmed the broken remnants of the planetary fleet, streaks of light marking the obliteration of humanity's final defense. Commander Anya Sokolov, her stoic mask barely concealing the weight of an entire species on her shoulders, gripped the arms of her chair so tightly her knuckles turned white. It was over. After decades of fighting, of retreat and relentless loss, the cradle of humanity had fallen. Her voice, usually so strong and sure, was a broken whisper. "Comms, open a general channel." "Ma'am?" Lieutenant Jafari hesitated, his eyes wide with disbelief. "Do it!" Anya snapped, and Jafari, with the tiniest flinch, carried out the order. Moments later, the mocking insectoid voice of the Xandari Grand Overseer filled the bridge. "Ah, Commander Sokolov," he chortled, barely disguised glee vibrating in the distorted speech. "I do so enjoy the sound of surrender. Is there some specific ritual your primitive race prefers? Some grovelling, perhaps?" Anya glared at the projection of the Xandari's chitinous face, her spine stiffening. "Just came to give you one last look at what you're destroying, monster." The Overseer let out a booming insectoid laugh. "Your defiance is quaint. Perhaps I will keep a sample of your kind, an amusing reminder of how truly superior the Xandari Empire is." A grim smile flitted across Anya's face. "Protocol Omega," she said firmly. "Authorization, Sokolov Theta X-45. At the far end of the bridge, Ensign Torres looked up in alarm. "Commander, you can't. Omega violates—" "I said authorization, Ensign," Anya bellowed. Every eye on the bridge was locked on her in stunned horror. Reluctantly, Torres tapped out the codes on her terminal. Within the Orion's most secure databanks, layers of ancient encryption peeled away, revealing an abomination buried there for centuries, an abomination humanity hoped to never use. Across the ravaged surface of Earth, hidden installations dormant since the Cold Wars crackled back to life. Automated systems sprang to attention, responding to the Omega Directive. Missile silos opened, launch pad lights flared, and deep within Earth's bowels something far more terrible stirred from its long slumber. The Xandari Overseer froze as warnings lit up his own bridge. What is this? Some archaic human weapon system? A second alarm chimed. Triangulating launch points, global energy surge. "No," he whispered, disbelief washing over him as the realization dawned. "No, you wouldn't dare." Anya watched the fear contort the Overseer's face. She felt a flicker of satisfaction amidst the despair. For too long, humanity had been on the back foot, retreating, adapting, using guerrilla tactics to stem the inexorable Xandari advance. The war had exacted a brutal toll, systems burned, planets turned to ash, billions exterminated. Now at the bitter end, it was time for those responsible to understand what humans feared most about themselves. A species pushed to the precipice, their backs against the wall, had nothing left to lose. That's when they were at their most unpredictable, most defiant, their most dangerous. "What wouldn't we dare?" Anya responded coldly. "You hunted us across the stars, exterminated our colonies, burned our home world. What wouldn't we do to ensure such a thing never happens again?" Back on Earth, the first streaks of light pierced the clouds. Not missiles. These were different, larger, slower. Each trail was an arc of searing blue energy, tearing upwards against gravity. Anya knew that for many of her crew, witnessing the Omega Directive was like seeing a ghost story brought to life. This was an apocalypse of humanity's own making, designed to ensure, if they fell, nobody could ever claim victory over Earth. "Transorbital kinetic bombardment," the Xandari Overseer croaked, now clearly gripped by an abject terror that contrasted starkly with his previous arrogance. As the Overseer scrambled, giving panicked orders, one thought was laser-focused in Anya's mind. It's too late to save everyone. Too many systems were lost, too many sacrifices already made. But she could damn well ensure these conquerors paid a price greater than they could possibly imagine. This, at last, was the reckoning for Earth. "Kinetic strike zones designated Priority Alpha," Torres stated, a hollow tone in her voice as she listed the areas marked for devastation. Nearly every Xandari surface installation across the occupied planet. Humanity would reclaim Earth, even if they had to scorch it in the process. At the heart of the Xandari flagship, the Overseer let out a primal screech of horror and rage. "Retreat! All ships! Full evacu!" His panicked transmission was cut short as the first kinetic rods struck home. Massive slugs of reinforced tungsten alloy, accelerated to a fraction of the speed of light, slammed into Earth with the force of extinction-level asteroids. No shields were powerful enough to stop them. On impact, they punched through the surface as easily as meteors through water. Aboard the Orion, hushed gasps and stifled whimpers rippled through the bridge. Even those who knew what Protocol Omega entailed seemed unprepared for the reality of its implementation. Below, Earth was becoming an inferno, each impact like the wrath of an old god. The holoscreen blinked out as their view was obscured by monstrous clouds of debris. Then came the second phase. Deep beneath the scarred surface of the Earth, in chambers sealed during the darkest hours of mankind's past, ancient seismic generators roared back to life. Their creators had called them tectonic amplifiers, machines built to focus and unleash the primal dormant energy churning beneath the Earth's crust. For an agonizing minute, nothing seemed to happen. Then an almost imperceptible shudder ran through the Orion as the unthinkable force was unleashed deep within the Earth. Fault lines groaned to life. Continents quivered. Massive chunks of the Xandari-occupied continents split, swallowed by widening gaps as the seismic amplifiers destabilized the very tectonic plates of the planet. On the Xandari flagship, total chaos reigned. Consoles exploded, crew members were hurled violently about. Even as the overseer screamed desperate commands, the ship tilted violently, internal supports twisting with a protesting screech of metal. "Ma'am," Jafari shouted, "the Xandari, they're in pandemonium!" A fierce smile twisted Anya's lips. They weren't simply annihilating Xandari forces. The kinetic bombardment and seismic chaos was tearing apart the conquered lands they occupied, rendering them permanently unstable. Humanity was denying them not just victory, but the very spoils of their war. "Contact any ships still able to jump. Tell them to get clear," she ordered, her voice regaining a touch of the iron command that earned her the leadership of the fleet's remnants. She wouldn't allow those not directly responsible for the devastation of Earth to die, a flicker of the old-fashioned humanitarian values of humanity clinging on even now. As the shattered remains of the Xandari armada fled, Anya took a deep breath, her chest aching with loss and a grim sort of triumph. For years her people had survived, always outmatched, always fighting against the odds. They'd become masters of guerrilla warfare, of hit-and-run tactics that bled their enemies slowly. It had not been enough. Now humanity had shown its full teeth. For the first time, the Xandari Empire knew fear. Not fear of loss in battle. This was existential fear, the dawning horror that they'd pushed a seemingly inferior race too far and awakened a monster. With Earth now an uninhabitable tomb with any possible survivors of the initial invasion stranded on a broken fragment of their conquest, humanity had proven that even total, overwhelming defeat would not crush their defiant spirit. There would be no negotiations, no offers of reparations, no surrender. Earth's final chapter might be written in fire and brimstone, but from those ashes would rise a humanity with a burning desire for vengeance. That was Anya's gamble. That the price paid today would give humanity the space to breathe, to rebuild, and come back even stronger. "Ensign Torres," she barked, forcing a measure of control back into her voice. "Scan for survivors. Deploy recon drones. I want a full assessment of the Xandari losses and any pockets of our own people still left." "Ma'am, that planet down there." Torres sounded as if she couldn't quite believe her own readings. "The seismic destabilization. It's not stopping." Anya frowned, turning her gaze back to the projection showing what was left of their home. Earth hung shrouded in smoke and dust, great chasms visible even from orbit. The seismic destabilization process was still accelerating, cracks spider-webbing across the continents. A cold tremor ran down her spine. They hadn't meant to unleash total planetary destruction. "Commander!" Jafari barked. "New energy readings. It's the seismic generators." A map appeared on the holoscreen, a network of subterranean installations thrumming with activity far beyond the limits they were meant to operate at. This wasn't deliberate sabotage by dying Xandari. This was critical system failure triggered by the sheer stress put on the tectonic amplifiers. Earth's internal pressure was building, ready to erupt. Anya gripped the arms of her chair until her knuckles were bloodless. It wasn't supposed to be like this. The planet, her home, it was going to tear itself apart. There was nothing they could do to stop it. The realization sent a shockwave through the Orion's bridge. Anya understood. They'd not simply wounded the Xandari, they'd mortally wounded themselves. For all her cold calculation, this went beyond anything she had anticipated. It was one thing to sacrifice lives in battle, or even sacrifice Earth itself, to deny any enemy victory. But what they had done here was unleash an apocalypse, for which there was no escape. It transcended war, it was extinction. "Commander," Jafari said, his voice barely a whisper, "if Earth's core destabilizes—" He didn't need to finish the sentence. A destabilized Earth would be like a cosmic hand grenade, the ripple effects across the system catastrophic. Asteroid fields would be disturbed, potentially endangering neighboring planets. The delicate balance of their star system would be irrevocably altered. Waves of horror and revulsion swept through Anya, threatening to swallow her. Protocol Omega had only ever been discussed as a horrific absolute last resort, an unimaginable weapon only to be used if the alternative was the extermination of the entire human race. Its true scope had never been truly tested or even fully understood. Amidst the despair, an icy determination surged within her. "Lieutenant," she barked, forcing a semblance of command back into her voice. "Send every able ship into the outer rings of the system. They need to clear out asteroid fields. Do whatever they can to minimize the cascading effects. Torres, begin plotting every known colony or human outpost. Contact them, warn them." There was a pregnant pause, then quietly, "Ma'am, the Orion isn't built for that kind of work." Lieutenant Jafari trailed off, the unspoken implication clear. This was likely a one-way mission. A bleak smile flickered across Anya's lips. "Well then, it seems humanity gave me one final battle to fight, just a different kind than expected. Lieutenant, you have the bridge." "But Commander—" "That's an order," Anya interrupted, her voice sharp. She wouldn't allow them to disobey, not out of pity for her, but out of a sense of duty to whatever shreds of humanity were left out there in the darkness. They wouldn't survive. Their small starship had neither the fuel nor the resilience required for the gargantuan task ahead. But every rock cleared from the path of an asteroid might buy another colony a precious extra day, extra time to prepare or find shelter from the coming upheaval. Anya left the bridge without looking back. It was done. Now it was time to see the consequences of her decisions. She made her way down deserted corridors, past panicked crew members scrambling to fulfill their assignments. She found herself in the Orion's observation deck, once a place for admiring the vastness of space, now filled with a strange dread. Before her, Earth burned not with the brilliant flashes of kinetic strikes, but with an ominous inner glow, like a coal smouldering from within. Cracks widened at an appalling rate, spreading outward from the initial impact zones. Oceans swelled and retreated, leaving vast stretches of seafloor exposed, nature itself reeling from the tectonic chaos. Within her chest, a cold numbness battled with a torrent of emotions. Remorse at what she'd set in motion, fury at the Xandari, and at herself for resorting to such destructive measures. But beneath that throbbed a fierce pang of pride. They had been brought to the brink, backed into a corner, left with almost nothing, yet they had done the unthinkable. From now on, every civilization in the galaxy would remember the name of humanity. They wouldn't just be remembered as victims or as the species that fought bravely even while outnumbered. They would be whispered about as the race that had the sheer gall to destroy their own home planet, rather than submit, that turned annihilation into a weapon. "Commander!" A hesitant voice startled her. She turned to see Ensign Torres, eyes red-rimmed, fear and respect warring in her young face. "Ensign," Anya acknowledged with a nod. The formalities felt both absurd and curiously comforting in this cataclysmic moment. "There were pockets of survivors found," Torres reported. "The underground shelters." Her voice caught. "Some people made it." A flicker of hope bloomed in Anya's chest. "How many? Give me some good news for once, Ensign." A shaky smile touched Torres' lips. "Thousands, ma'am. Evacuation is already underway." Relief surged through Anya like a jolt. Earth might be lost, but some sliver of their civilization had miraculously survived her gamble. "And the Overseer?" Anya asked, the question biting her tongue. Part of her still wanted to know that the architect of all this suffering had also perished. Torres' expression became grim. "Their flagship was one of the few that managed to jump in time. I'm sorry, he escaped." Disappointment clawed at Anya, yet with surprising ease she let it go. The Xandari survivors would carry the story of Earth within them, a story passed down, generation to generation, a warning about the lengths an unassuming corner of the cosmos would go when pushed to the limit. Even as Earth tore itself apart around them, Anya felt an odd flicker of satisfaction amidst the despair. This was their legacy. She returned her gaze to the shattered world before her. With growing horror and awe, they watched as the first great chunk of continental shelf broke free, hurtling into the cosmos, leaving behind a gaping wound. More soon followed, fragments of her home flung outward, forever adrift in the silent vastness. Her knees weak, Anya sank to the floor. They might not have conventional victory, but the destruction in front of her. This was her doing. No matter the strategic arguments or self-righteous justification, she carried the crushing weight of her decision. Earth was well and truly lost. "Ma'am, look!" Ensign Torres gasped, her voice laced with awe. Amidst the chaos, something spectacular emerged, a shimmer of emerald green. At first, Anya mistook it for an atmospheric distortion. Then, as her eyes widened, she realized its true nature. From the heart of their world, the planet's lifeblood, the aurora borealis, surged like a beacon, twisting and turning impossibly, reaching up as if defiant, a final dance before the dark night. Perhaps it was a simple trick of the dying light, or her shattered mind seeing hope where none existed, but for a moment Anya glimpsed in that ethereal brilliance a symbol of humanity itself, battered, broken, but unyielding. Even at the end, a final gasp of beauty and resilience. In that dying dance of their ravaged world, a flicker of humanity's undying spirit shone brightest. "Ensign," Anya began, her voice trembling and raw, "you see that? Let them all see it. Tell every colony, every ship, every outpost out there, this is us." Torres nodded, understanding in her tear-streaked eyes. Their final defiant act wouldn't just be a horrifying legend, but a symbol too, a signal blazing out that humanity lived on, their spirit unbroken. "I will, Commander. It's going to take some explaining, though." She chuckled, a note of genuine humour slipping past her sorrow. Anya managed a faint smile. It was the end of their world, but somehow not the extinction of their hope. She'd led her people into the abyss, but they'd emerged carrying embers of their defiant spirit. The surviving fleet, the colonies now warned of the looming danger, those pockets of survivors. That was humanity now. Not conquerors, but defiant specks scattered across the cosmos, rebuilding. And one day, perhaps, they'd even seek those shattered pieces of Earth adrift in space, seeking what fragments of home they could reclaim. But first, survival. "Commander," Torres hesitated, "what now?" The question hit like a physical blow. Now came the hardest part. Anya stood back straighter, a leader once more. "Now, we start over. Now we find some place to rest and regroup. But most importantly, now we pass on the story of what happens when you push humanity too far. No matter what happens next, they won't forget us, Ensign. We made damn sure of that." Her own words surprised her. When this mission began, her heart echoed with bleak resolve. Yet, standing before the shattered remains of Earth illuminated by the emerald fire of its own demise, it wasn't despair anchoring her spirit, it was defiance. She couldn't bring back their world. She couldn't undo the horrors they'd unleashed. But, as humanity had risen to every challenge thrown at them throughout history, as their ingenuity had brought them from caves to the stars, she had faith. Even without a planet, even scattered and reeling, humans were survivors. It was woven into the very fabric of their species. For the rest of her days, Anya knew she'd carry the ghosts of those lost and the weight of the apocalyptic decision she had made. But beneath that crushing burden, a spark, small yet undeniably potent, had also been kindled. It was the relentless, irrational spark of resilience that fueled the best and worst of the human spirit. In a corner of their hearts, even as Earth met its violent end, the defiant few clung to that spark. They would fight, they would rebuild, and across the dark vastness of space, the legend of Earth would ignite like a warning flare. From this ruin, humanity would rise again, different but unbroken. Days stretched into weeks. Life aboard the Orion took on a somber, measured rhythm. The devastation within Earth's star system stabilized, leaving the remnants of their world suspended in space, a chilling monument to an apocalypse of their own making. For Anya it was a living nightmare and a source of quiet determination. There were moments when she doubted every decision she'd made. Would humanity look back on her as a saviour or a destroyer? Yet when that doubt tried to swallow her whole, she forced herself to stare out at the void where Earth once thrived. That haunting panorama held her answer. The destruction they'd unleashed was immense, but its purpose fulfilled. The Xandari threat was crippled. The surviving human ships and colonies scattered across the stars now knew of Earth's fate. The message spread faster than any fleet could move. Anya imagined shocked voices whispering the story into the vastness of space, the name of a once seemingly unremarkable species, synonymous with apocalyptic defiance. That legacy was all they had left, a legend cast with sacrifice and desperation. The remnants of the fleet limped toward an old uninhabited human outpost, once deemed too small, too poorly situated to truly colonize. It would now be their sanctuary, a place to rest, assess the grim tally of survivors, and most importantly, plan the uncertain future. "Mum?" Torres tapped tentatively at the door to Anya's sparsely furnished quarters. She looked even younger than her years, but a new tenacity etched lines across her face. "Enter!" Anya's voice was hoarse from disuse. Torres entered carrying a simple metal box she cradled with care. "For you," she said, setting the box on Anya's desk. "One of the recon pods recovered it, drifting with the rest of the debris. I thought you might—" Torres trailed off, eyes wide with unshed tears. Anya pried open the box and gasped. Inside was a broken shard of ceramic, pale blue with fragments of white, a crude child's painting of Earth, an ocean, a sunrise. Nothing valuable, a remnant from before the war when such trinkets littered homes across their lost world. But it was hers, salvaged from the ashes of her greatest sacrifice. "Tell them," Anya's voice wavered with emotion. "Tell them not to mourn. Tell them to remember and learn, to build something better." Tears spilled over as she closed her fingers around that simple piece of their broken past. It was a memento of what they'd lost and a fragile seed of hope. And so humanity clung to their existence, scattered and scarred. With Earth a memory, they would have to fight fiercely for their place in the cosmos. Anya carried the scars of the choice she'd made, but now her focus was singular, ensuring humanity would become more than what had destroyed their world, more than an object lesson about excessive force. The Orion became a refuge and a symbol, and across the stars, echoes of Earth's final act reached other sentient races, sparking curiosity, caution, and above all respect for these creatures capable of sacrificing everything when cornered. They called it overkill. Humanity might not yet deserve salvation, but they had certainly earned survival.